It doesn't seem possible. It's just too much of a reach. Science doesn't prove it. Where's the dead one? No one has a dead one. There aren't any bones. There's no teeth. A car would have hit one and killed it by now. I have hunted all my life and never seen one. I'm from the country, raised cows since I was born. I've been a logger for 30 years and never saw nothing. There's millions and millions of people on this earth. Someone would have a good video by now. All those cell phones, all those game cameras, where's one good picture? Valid. All valid points. Very logical, very sensible, very comforting. Until 800 pounds of legend shows up. Now you can smell him. His eyes luminesce. You're close enough to hear his voluminous breathing. Science and logic just caught the last bus out of here. You are now facing what shouldn't and can't be. Standing on the shards of a broken paradigm, you don't need a watch to know what time it is. It's 0 Squatch 30. Bobby, thanks a lot for coming in and talking to us tonight. Real interesting story you've got that you were telling me about, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of it. You were saying that, well, I'll let you tell the story, Bob.
Okay, no problem. Glad to be here. I've been over the road truck driver for 40 years now, seen a lot of things. Very few things ever scared me, but I saw something that scared me back in about 89. And before this, I would have told you, if you told me it's such a thing as a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, or an ape man, or whatever existed, I would ask you what windmill you was sitting on smoking dope, because I didn't believe in them. And I was north of Wenatchee, Washington. I believe it's Highway 28 that runs up there, and you get on 72 or 79, 97 and Route 2 come together. And I was just north of there. Sunny, I forget the name of the little town. I was just north of it. There's a pullover where trucks park at night. I was going to load apples. It was apple season in the fall of the year. And I was going up to load a load of apples, come back to Abingdon, Virginia, to the Mid-Mountain Warehouse. And it was about 12 at night, Washington time, so I pull over. I know I can't get no parking at the Apple House because there's going to be a lot of trucks up there.
Right.
So I pull in, roll my windows down a little bit, cut my truck off, crawl back in the bunk.
This is like on some country
Yeah,
pull-off.
it's a two-lane road.
Right
It's
on.
just it's kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it's about like going through the forest. Only it's not steep or mountainous. It's just rolling country.
It's like a blue highway, basically.
Yeah. It's a U.S. highway.
Yep.
And I pull over. There's this place that's got trash cans and a little picnic table and just different stuff where people stop at. Basically a scenery look out at the mountains and stuff. And I pull over and go to bed, crawl back in the bunk. I'm tired. I slip my boots off, crawl back in the bunk. And not long before daylight.
Now let me interrupt you for a second, Bob. Did you have did you have the windows down? Were they
Well,
up?
they were probably down 6 inches on each side of the truck.
Okay.
You know, I had an air window on the right. I rolled it down about 6 inches. I rolled it down about 6 inches. That gives you a little breeze, a little air through the truck. I mean, we're talking fall of the year during apple gathering season. It's not real hot and it's not real cold.
Okay.
And I wake up and there's this horrible stink. I mean, it's like makes me kind of want to gag, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I stir around a little bit, and I get up, and it's still dark. I slide up in the driver's seat, fumble around and get my cigarettes, my lighter. And when I flick my lighter, I got one of those old Bic or Zippo lighters. It's fluid lighter. When I light it up, I catch a glimpse of something right in the windshield of the truck, and it's like there's two red dots, big old red dots.
Mm-hmm.
So I held the lighter up to the windshield, and it moved. It's like stepped back. So I lit my cigarette. I rubbed my eyes, rubbed my face, and kept rubbing and looking and trying to peer out, see what it was. Finally, I got focused. It looked like a man, but it wasn't a man. It was the biggest creature I ever laid eyes on.
How high do you suppose these red dots were that you were looking at?
Well, from the ground to the bottom of the windshield on a cab over truck is approximately 6 feet, and he was halfway up the windshield. I'm looking at him eyeball to eyeball, and me sitting in the seat.
Nice.
And now remember, this thing is only as far away from me as you are right here.
Couple feet, basically.
Couple 3 feet, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 2 foot from the windshield, and he's right there outside the windshield.
Right.
So I panic. I mean, I'm scared to death. I'm having trouble breathing. I panic. So I turn the headlights on, and he don't care. He just steps back a step and looks at me. Every time I make eye contact with him, he's got a different, his face changes.
Right.
And then I tried to blow the air horn, and the air pressure was down. It just went, ooh, and he kind of looked up at the top of the truck and looked back at me like, you idiot, or something, I mean.
Not real intimidated.
Yeah, not
at
real
this
intimidated at all. He ain't, there ain't no fear in this thing, and he knows I'm scared because he can sense that I'm scared.
Right.
So I cranked the truck up, and the air buzzer on the low air pressure got his attention now. He was, doing one of them back take numbers and looking at the truck, but it still really didn't startle him. And I'm trying to fumble around. I speed the motor up, try to race the motor, and he don't care if he races the motor. It don't faze him. He's still standing 3 or 4 feet from the truck. And finally I get it to where I got enough air pressure to leave, and I start to pull out. Well, I catch a glimpse of something, and there's 2 more.
Up ahead of you.
Up ahead of me. And one of them is probably about my size, about, I'd say 5.5, 6 foot. And it's not very big. It's skinny, different made. And then there's one that's between that and him. And I'm like, I'm scared worse then, but I'm moving. So I go ahead and start pulling out, and he just kind of sainters off toward them and down over the bank, and they're gone,
Not a care in the world, just walk away.
But what gets me is I've always seen the drawings and the pictures, and they had hairy faces and big old noses and big old mouth, all this stuff. Not the one I saw. He had a rounded face, didn't have any hair at all on his face. I mean, he had eyebrows like people do, but his hair that started under his chin, under his neck, and went down. And he had real big old hands. I mean, humongous hands and long arms, big arms. And I'd say if you put a tape measure on his shoulders, you was bumping 4 foot across his shoulders. Wow. But that smell, man,
How would you describe that smell? I mean, was it like rotten meat? Was it like
no, I've never.
Wet dog?
Closest thing I can come to is just corn, just rotten, just a rotten. I'd say a buffalo hunter would probably smell close to it. Maybe, I don't know. I never smelled a buffalo hunter, but you know what I'm saying. It's like it's just a smell that hangs, and it don't go out of your nostrils. I mean, 6 hours later, you still get a whiff of this, and I'm like, it was coming from them.
Yeah,
it was coming from them, and I knew I basically understand why they were there, because all week I had been eating. I mean, I'd grab a quick meal because I had so many furniture stops. I'd grab a burger. I'd grab fried chicken, a piece of pizza, whatever,
Right.
And when I get done eating with it, I put it in the box, and the passenger side of a cab over has got the perfect trash can.
Yep.
You just chuck it over there.
I've seen many of them that look that way, yep.
Yeah, and at the end of the week, you get out, and you clean all your shit out, and brush it out, and you're ready again.
Yep.
Well, then that, plus there was a box of donuts somewheres in the truck, and I mean, goodies and candy bars and stuff I've been eating on, but the smell of the food, I think, is what brought them. Because the truck wasn't running, the truck was quiet, I was quiet, everything was quiet. And then I went on up to the Apple House, and these guys laughed their ass off at me. They laughed so hard they were about in tears. And I said, "You really think this is funny?" He said, "No." He said, "We know what's going on." He said, "We know you saw something. And we also can tell you that during apple season, these things will go through the apple orchard and pick out the tree that they want the apples. They've got a certain appetite, a certain taste. And when they find that tree, they'll demolish it. They'll clean every apple on it off. They'll break branches, limbs, whatever to get to it. I mean, you think about this. This thing was a good 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
His arms went plumb down to his knees.
Yeah.
When he reaches up, he's reaching 14, 15 feet in the air, man.
That's most apple trees
And
because they
taller,
cut them short.
That's taller than most apple trees out there because they're dwarf trees. And, I mean, could you see one of these things standing there picking bushel apples?
And how many apples could one of these things eat would be another question, too.
I have no idea. I'd say one of them could put away a bushel real easy, core and all, you know.
Eat more apples than an Amishman.
I'd be getting carried away now. But no, I've told very few people my story because people don't believe, and I know I was one of them people, you know.
Yeah.
I was one of the ones that I'd make fun of you and
sure
put my arms down and act like I ate and all this crap, you know. And then after I saw this one, well, I didn't see one, man. I saw 3.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they exist. But the face on him, where I was talking about no hair, the closest that I can describe him, I mean, I've been everywhere except for Alaska and Hawaii. I've been all over Canada, the northern provinces. I've been up into Alaska, up to the North Shore, all over the country. The closest people that I can describe him looking like is the Chinook, the true original Indian or Alaskan or whatever you call them. They're in the Northwest Territory of Canada and they're in Alaska. But they've got a rounded face. They're they're not black, they're not red, they're just a dark colored people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they're round faced. And that's the closest that I can describe what he looked like. Of course, he did have pretty good sized ears. I mean, they weren't real big or real small, but they were I guess they were proportional to his size, yeah. And he did not have a little head. You know, I've seen them pictures and stuff where they draw him with the small head on the big body. His head was proportioned to his mass.
Was the head, was it high up on the shoulders, low on the chest,
no, it's set,
normal?
His head set. He didn't have he didn't have a neck like me and you got. His head was more down in his shoulders, not.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he couldn't turn his head all the way around and look, you know, to the right or the left. But,
yeah.
But he was, and it could have been muscle mass too, you know, or hair.
Right.
Because I'm gonna tell you, I was scared shitless.
Oh, I bet, man. Yeah, I think anybody would be if they were being honest about it.
Yeah, I was so scared that I was to the point by the time I got up to the Apple House, which was about 30 minutes away, I was at the point of throwing up. And I don't know where it was my nerve, where it was scared, or where it was the smell, the stench, you know. But it was a horrifying experience. And what got me was this thing had no fear whatsoever. He wasn't afraid of the truck. He wasn't afraid of me. He wasn't afraid of the lights. The horn didn't bother him. The only thing that got his attention that I think he had never heard was a buzzer. When the buzzer came on for my low air pressure when I cranked the
now that's the most terrifying part to me is, like you say, the no fear aspect of it.
There ain't nothing. There's no fear in them. And I mean, I've seen things all over the country. I've seen unidentified junk. I've seen animals cross the road. I've seen big masses look like a human run across the road, but I was never close enough to identify what it was, like I was this.
Right.
I've heard people talk about ghosts. Yeah, I've seen ghosts.
Right.
And I know they were real ghosts because I stopped and there wasn't nobody there, you know. But nothing ever scared me. I mean, I was always, I want to see what this is, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I knew what this was, and I didn't want to see what he was.
Well, Bobby, I know this was you were trying to beat feet and get out of there, and I don't blame you. I would have been too. But the other two that were standing off away, did they all look similar in color and in appearance?
Oh yeah, they were. I wasn't close enough to see facial figures,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know I saw enough with the headlight that they didn't have any hair on their face. They were like he was. But far as to really intensely check them out, no, man, I'm like Mario Andretti. I gotta go. But no, it was. Excuse me. It was ordeal.
Yeah.
And like I said, I never told anybody about it for years. I knew people laugh at me, and it bothered me, you know.
Yeah. It's it's a big deal. It's scary.
Yeah.
And
especially if you don't believe in them. If you don't believe it,
yeah, you will quick when it happens.
I mean, if you don't believe this, I mean, you know, I hear people say, "Well, I don't believe in God." Hey, He shows up in front of you like that, boys, you'll believe in it.
You got it, man.
You know, it's like
you're not the first person I've ever talked to that, you know, didn't give it a thought or didn't believe or whatever, and then they had a pretty up close and personal encounter like that, and it's a real paradigm breaker. It's it'll change your way of thinking.
Believe me, I didn't park there no more when I went to get apples. I stayed down to Ellenburg till I got ready the next morning. It's about a 2.5-hour drive up there.
Well, Cryptovania is a good place to tell your story at because this is a warm audience for this. Most people that are listening or watching in Cryptovania, they're going to be people that see it the same way you do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people with experiences out there, and not a lot of them are brave enough to come forward and tell them. So, we really do appreciate that.
I'll tell you right now, if you ever see one, and you see him up close, you won't forget it, and it can't nobody change your mind.
Right.
You know. I mean, I've seen a lot of things over the years, seen a lot of good things, a lot of bad things, but that was an experience that was like, that was a college education to me in my field, you know what I'm saying? Driving a truck, seeing this and all this stuff, it's like, wow, man, how many people get to see that, you know?
Well, it interests me how many people do see stuff, but they don't come forward because of the ridicule factor.
Yeah, they don't talk about it. Man. I'll guarantee you if there's a truck driver that ever hauled apples out of the Northwest, if he went out there in apple season and pulled over in an unsecluded place, I'll bet you money he's seen one. Maybe not up close, but he's seen them.
Now, I'm with a school of thought that I think apples and frogs are the two main things that they survive on, and even around here locally where there's apple orchards and stuff, I think it's some prime territory for activity.
Probably,
and stuff.
I know that one guy out there at the Apple House. He was a native there and lived there all his life. And, you know, I asked him, I said, you believe in the Bigfoot? He said, oh, yeah, I don't have to deny him. I've seen several, you know. And me and him was talking, and he was the one telling me that they're selective about their apple trees. And they would go, you might find an apple where they took a bite of it and just throw the rest of it down because it wasn't to the flavor or it wasn't ripe enough or whatever to suit them. But then when they find that tree that's got their particular taste on it, that's the one that they wipe out. I mean, they just clean it out.
That's really interesting too, because I've never heard that spin put on it before.
Yeah. And but they're just like me and you. I mean, they got taste that they like. You know, maybe you like spaghetti and I don't, or you like sweet apple pie and I like the crumb pie. You know, and it's
you know, like I think about with the Sasquatch and that is. Everything about them is bigger. Like their vocals, their voice box is bigger. They have more of a range of what they can make for sounds, and so probably their tongue's bigger. They probably taste even more than we do.
But you know, that's what's amazing to me. He didn't make a sound. He was as interested in me as I was him after I kind of realized what it was. But he was really as interested in me as he was anything else. But he didn't make a sound.
There's something I want to ask you, Bob. Without getting too personal, was it obvious if it was a male or a female?
Oh yeah, it was obvious he was a male. Yep.
That's interesting, though. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. And that's something that is common to a lot of people's encounters too. It's obvious if it's a male or a female.
There's no denying when you see one of them, it's a male. He's a male. Yeah, and it's what got me was I didn't really. I mean, I noticed it that it was a male, you know. But far as to inspect or say what color, I can't. I just
Right.
know that thing was huge.
Right, right, yeah.
You know.
But it's funny when people have an encounter. It's so shocking that maybe they fixate on the eyes or it was so wide or whatever, and it really gives a lot of credence to how exasperating and shocking of an encounter
But
this
see,
is.
when he backed up from my truck, my headlights was shining right right on that part of it.
Yeah,
I mean, I had a spotlight view.
and that's so wild. Like he didn't even take off running.
No, he was not afraid of an automobile. He was not afraid of a truck. I don't think he had no reason to be afraid of nothing except a high-powered rifle.
Right.
That'd have been a good one.
Yeah.
You know.
Bobby, if you had to guess a weight on the thing, now I realize this is a quick encounter, but I mean, could you even throw a guess as to what maybe the weight of it was?
Well, I had a great uncle that was 6'7". He was broad at the shoulders. He was a big man. He wasn't a fat man. He was a big man, and he weighed about 245. And this thing was probably 3 times as big as Uncle Bill.
Right on.
I'm saying it went to 600-700 pound range, easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you think about this. They eat, they travel all the time. There's no fat there. This is muscle,
Right.
and muscle is heavier than fat.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm saying he was he would have bought. He was 700 or better, and I'd probably say he was 700 or better.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did get to see his foot. His toes was like mine and yours, and his his nails went down over the end of his
They
toes.
curved down over the end.
Yeah, but it was like my fingernails, your fingernails, whatever. And his fingernails was like our fingernails on his hand, but they were all short. Like I don't know. I don't know how he shortened them, but they were short. Probably kept
ground
wore
off from
yeah.
use and
Yeah, and but yeah, I did. I mean, I got a good. He got back far enough away from my truck. I had a good view of him and he was standing right where one of my left headlight was shining right on him.
yeah.
And I had a good view. The color on him, he was not black and he wasn't red. He was like a brown, light color brown, maybe a darker brown, light brown. Actually, his upper body was darker than his legs and his lower body was, because I mean, I guess I don't know why, but this part up here, his torso was a darker color than the rest of him was. Well, it might have been because the light was shining direct on that part of him too. But he was a light brown color, light hair, like a brown bear,
Right.
and his hair wasn't long and scraggly like you see, like the pictures, like people describe. His hair wasn't long and scraggly. His hair was actually, he was pretty well groomed, I thought, but I never could figure that smell out. I don't know.
A lot of people think that almost like the same way a beaver has beaver will have castor oil, that they have some kind of
secretion that comes out of their skin or something.
yeah. And some people think it's
true.
when they're excited, and some people think it's only like the males do it as like some kind of a sexual thing to alert the females or something.
Could be,
but that smell's definitely common.
Could be like a tiger,
Yeah. Now, Bobby, like this whole encounter, how long do you suppose this whole thing took? I mean, I'm sure it probably seemed like an hour, but how long do you think?
Oh, it seemed like a lifetime.
Yeah.
But it took me 4 to 6 minutes to build the air pressure up on my truck.
That's a great point, because I know when your truck's out of air, you ain't going nowhere until you get the air built up, and you know exactly how long it takes.
I got it up to probably 90 pounds, enough to release the brakes. So it was 4 to 6 minutes.
That's a long time.
That's a long time when you stand there looking at the biggest thing you ever laid eyes on. I mean,
and you said
a lifetime.
You would hit the air horn and run it clean out of air and stuff.
Yeah, I did.
Anyway,
whenever I got up, when I first saw him, I pulled on the air horns and it wasn't enough air pressure to make it blow. It just went, ooh.
Yeah, so you was out. You was out of air.
Yeah. I was probably down to 20 pound,
Oh, man.
18, 20 pounds of air pressure or less. And then you got to sit there, and we ain't talking no new, modern, up-to-date truck. We're talking an old cab-over Freightliner, you know, with a 400 Cummins and
Just like
just
the
a
ones we work on all the time. I know exactly what you mean.
And I'm like, it seemed like it took forever, and I'm sitting here holding the fuel down on it. He don't care. The sound of the engine revving up and going fast, it don't bother him.
Which, and that's a loud sound, too.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're standing right in front of it.
Yeah.
You know, and of course I had straight pipes too. That didn't.
Yeah.
But still, when I said I had straight pipes, I had a little resonator on it. You know, kind of calm it down a little bit. But it was pretty loud, and it's like it don't faze him. There's no fear in them. I mean, if you ever encounter one, you remember he's not afraid of you. There's nothing for him to be afraid of.
And what time of night do you suppose this was, or what time of day, or morning, or evening?
California time, I'm going to say it was around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It was not long before daylight. Within an hour and a half, it was daylight. Within an hour, it was daylight. You know.
That seems to be like prime time for action, too. It's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning from what we've ever encountered.
But, man, it was ordeal. I mean, you know, think if I've often thought about this. My normal procedure when I wake up in the morning, is I wake up, I light me a cigarette, I open the door, I climb out of the truck, I step back at the tires and take a leak.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't saw those red eyes, I would have been on the ground with this thing.
Wow.
You know, I'm like, no.
I never thought of that either. That's pretty terrifying in itself.
I'll tell you what I do. Well, ever since then, if I get up and the truck's been cut off and everything's off, I fire the truck up and I turn at least the marker lights on before I get out of the truck.
Yes, sir.
I've done that ever since that day. You know, it's like, you can ask my wife.
Right.
You know, we run teams. She's run with me. If we're parked somewhere and this truck's off, I don't get out of the truck unless I crank the truck and turn the marker lights on. And it's like, there's just so much that people don't realize. There's so much you don't realize that can happen that's in the dark. The dead ain't going to hurt you. It's what's alive is going to get you.
Right.
And I'm like, it's just amazing. It's the stuff that people have seen that they don't tell about. Because I've heard other drivers talking, I've heard other people talking, and people would say something smart to them about, you know, funny pills or whatever.
Right.
And they just instantly, they just shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, right then, they're telling the truth.
Yep.
Because if they were telling a lie, they would continue on. You know what I'm saying? Try to convince somebody.
You know, all these guys like yourself and other people that have given us their stories and people I've talked to over the years and stuff, you ain't making a thin dime on this.
No.
You ain't making a dime. And you stand to gain nothing by telling the story.
No.
I ain't
going to be famous for seeing a Bigfoot.
Right,
you know?
right. And neither is all the thousands and thousands of other people, but yet they still come forward and submit themselves to the ridicule and all the horsing around and all the jazzing they got to take, and they still do it anyhow because it's true. People don't come forward for a lie to be lambasted by people that don't know them.
You can ridicule me all you want to, but I know what I saw.
Yep. And that's the same way that everybody I talk to, that's how they are. I know I know you're telling me the truth, and I know these other people are telling me the truth too. There's no doubt in my mind. I know it. Now, these other people, I haven't known them as long as I've known you in most instances, but it doesn't matter. I know when somebody's lying to me, and I dealt with the public all my life.
Thing of it is these people that, I'm going to tell you, there's an area in the northwest of the United States that runs up into Canada, up into British Columbia, and up in Saskatoon, and all up through there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've run all this territory. There's some places out there that man has never set foot.
I agree with you 100%.
I mean, he's never been there.
There ain't no roads.
And there's no roads, and there's very little access to it,
right.
Unless you're a mountain goat or something like what we're talking about. Well, how can people say they don't exist when they've got the best habitat of anywhere in the world. Because when you get in the northwest corner of the United States and the southwest corner of Canada, you've got highlands, you've got valleys, lowlands, you've got caves, you've got swamps,
Cliffs.
you've got anything that they need to survive.
Yeah.
Food sources.
Food sources out the yin yang.
Yeah.
Water everywhere.
And it's nothing contaminated. I mean, it's all main source, you know?
And another thing, too, is like you were saying earlier, you got something that's 8 to 12 foot tall in some instances, and its hands bump its knees because the arms are so long. They're browsing in an area of the plant life that nothing else is.
Nothing's there.
Yeah, so they've got smorgasbord every place they go,
That's
everything they eat. They got all they want because nothing else can get it.
Anything they want, all the berries, apples, whatever. It's. I'm gonna say, probably if man knew what they know about the plant life, we'd never have to go to a doctor. You know what I'm saying?
I think there's a lot of truth in that, man.
Yeah.
Yes,
because,
sir.
and I know they exist. I mean, that's the only one I've ever really seen that I can say I saw one. But I saw other things that I thought was them, but they were too far out of view for me to really identify what they were.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, Bobby, I couldn't agree with you more. That was very interesting, and sure do appreciate you coming in and giving your story to us and stuff. And thanks so much for being brave and coming forward, and hope that encourages a lot of other people either to come forward or feel better knowing that what they saw they really did see, and this might help a lot of people out. And thanks a lot for coming in, man.
No problem. One of these days I'll tell you about the bear.
Sounds good. We'll do that. Thanks, Bob. We'll see ya.
Yep.
It doesn't seem possible. It's just too much of a reach. Science doesn't prove it. Where's the dead one? No one has a dead one. There aren't any bones. There's no teeth. A car would have hit one and killed it by now. I have hunted all my life and never seen one. I'm from the country, raised cows since I was born. I've been a logger for 30 years and never saw nothing. There's millions and millions of people on this earth, Someone would have a good video by now. All those cell phones, all those game cameras, where's one good picture? Valid. All valid points. Very logical, very sensible, very comforting. Until 800 pounds of legend shows up. Now you can smell him. His eyes luminesce. You're close enough to hear his voluminous breathing. Science and logic just caught the last bus out of here. You are now facing what shouldn't and can't be. Standing on the shards of a broken paradigm, you don't need a watch to know what time it is. It's 0 Squatch 30. Brother Thomas, thanks for stopping into Cryptovania so you could tell us your story tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my friend. For the folks, your story unfolds. Where are you at? What are you doing? How's this whole thing happen?
Well, I was up in around Erie Bluffs, and right down the road from State Game Lands 314. I go into the area just about every day, different spots, and I walk down along a creek bed.
Which, this is that area you've been posting all the cool pictures from. You've got
Yes.
a lot of cool tree structures, etc., etc.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that stretch through there that I walk on both sides of the road probably covers about 3 to 5 miles. About a 3 to 5 mile loop on both sides that I walk.
Now, in this area, there are obviously some streams, as the video shows. There's lots of railroad beds as well, I believe, is there not?
Oh, yes.
And it's a swampy area to boot, and all, so it's really like a cornucopia of what a Sasquatch would want in its habitat, theoretically.
Especially where the video was taken. Where I was shooting, right behind me, probably about 50 feet back and above me, was actually a railroad. And in front of me, everything down below is a mud flat. And I'll actually be posting more pictures. I went back down and took more pictures to show you. There's banks that are, 6, 7, 20 feet high around one side. The other side is just covered in mud, swamp, beaver dams. There's only so many paths to get through there.
And I know one of the things you just posted the other day was there's quite a plethora of edible plants in this swamp too, the cowslips and leeks and all that stuff.
Oh, and a bunch, I actually come out of there reeking of leeks.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure skunk cabbage galore and on it goes.
And there's an abundance of everything. I mean, standing right there on the bank, you can see fish. And I don't know how far away they stalk, where exactly they stalk at, which they stalk everywhere, but I mean, there's natural springs all over the place, amphibians, there's geese, ducks, everything, everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, abundance of life all over the place in that area.
So you're in there, and it's approaching at what time of day or night?
It's actually early morning. I usually get out there. That area, I go in around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
I try to stay away from climbing too many hills that early in the morning. I'm young, but I can't do it.
Right.
But the swampy areas, I love the swampy areas. I love the tree bends that I find out there. And with all the life that's in the low-lying areas, you can find tracks. And that's one of my favorite things to look for. I mean, there's otters everywhere. And I've found some large tracks that you can't really identify. You don't know if it's a track or just a hole in the mud.
Right. The weather condition on the day you were there, when you got the video and stuff, overcast, clear and sunshiny, what was it like that day?
It was partly cloudy, partly sunny, a little chilly that day. Actually, on the way in, there was quite a bit of fog everywhere. Through a lot of the fields and farms that are surrounding the area that people actually live in.
Right.
They're tree farms, large tree farms and vineyards. So, I mean, even that is edible food. that you can get to and not be seen from the road or anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. You think about what is available in that area without even normal farming, which is probably in the outlying area of the forest. The abundance of natural stuff that's just growing everywhere, especially this time of year. I mean, my goodness, anything could go in. If you starve to death in the woods of Pennsylvania, it's really your own fault.
I say it all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so getting into it. So you're in the swamp. It's in the morning. It's just kind of an average kind of a day weather-wise and stuff, and you're back in a click, and you're back on a railroad grade or on a stream or both or whatever. And what happens next? Like, tell us what goes on from there.
Well, I had already circled around the bottom and walked around, and I walked up to where the railroad grade goes over the river. I walked up and crossed over where the tunnels are after I walked into them, which there's really could only go in so far.
Right.
But I went up top and sat down, and I was just taking a rest, sitting there, catching the view, took some pictures, and caught a little movement out of the corner of my eye, and I started filming. Right as soon as I stood up and started filming, and that's when I could see it actually moving. I stood there for a second, watched it move behind the tree, and I paused and I waited. I figured at that pace it'd either keep moving or it stopped. If it was stopped behind the tree, that's why I was like, where'd it go? I stopped the video and I headed right down there. You know, I beelined it to the area, and I never saw any other trace of it after it went behind the tree.
What were you? I know you were thinking, oh my gosh, but I mean, what were you thinking? Were you thinking that there's a bear in the creek, or what was the rational scientific part of your mind telling you that it was at first?
At first, I figured bear, fisherman, something like that right off the bat. I kind of knocked out bear unless it was walking on its hind legs. Sure. And, you know, paying attention to what's around it.
Right.
Like I said, I couldn't really see it very well. I don't have very good eyesight to begin with. But whether it was a fisherman, whatever it was, it disappeared. With no tracks, it got in there and got out without me being able to find out where it came from or where it went.
Yeah, if it was a fisherman, it was a stealthy fisherman.
And
it was the fisherman from Scary Movie, evidently, because it was so smooth.
Right. Very.
Did you have any like weird vibes, or I don't want to give it away. I've obviously seen the video on your phone several times, but what was the vibes? How were you feeling emotionally while this was going down?
Well, the adrenaline was going. Like, I mean, right now the hair's kind of starting to stand up on my arm a little bit.
Right.
But, I mean, the adrenaline's going, and I was just thinking, I want to see what it is.
Right.
I just kind of wanted to get down there. What is it? Because I couldn't see, and it was big. In the video, from how far away I was,
you can easily tell it was big.
Yeah. It was a large man. If it was a fisherman, it was a very large fisherman.
With a pointy head. And wide shoulders and big legs.
And he would have been able to jump very well and move very fast to avoid all of the mud and everything that was to get away in the direction opposite where I was coming from. If he was coming anywhere in my direction towards me, there was a minimum 6-foot bank the whole way that runs around. That one side, it's a bank, and then it just gets bigger.
You know, that was one of the things that I really liked about your video too, is especially since I had the opportunity to watch it on your phone, so it's not all compressed, and the detail is so good on the phone. But you can tell you are amped up, and you don't get like that when you see some dude fishing. I mean, it just the emotion in the video is legit, and I can tell that's not a guy fishing just by your reaction. So that was one of my favorite parts about it. And then when you go down and you look for the tracks, and there's no fishermen, there's no tracks, there's no nothing. I mean, that's got to be a what the heck moment. That's really got to be something to you.
That's what was making me question everything the most was where did it go? And
And where is it now?
I'm yes. I'm relatively good at picking up detail. I mean, you saw that tiny little turtle that I found driving down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm relatively good at catching things. I can find tracks. I love looking for tracks.
Right.
And to not see anything, no matter who or what it was, anything outside of goose, turkey, otter.
In the video, you watch it go across and then it's gone. Like it walks behind the tree and either got behind that tree and walked straight away, or
yeah.
Yeah, it almost seems like when the video's on it too, that it seems like at some point it realizes you're there, and this slick son of a gun, it goes behind the trees and puts the trees in between you and it. It seems 100% intentional.
Exactly what I thought too.
Yeah.
And hey, when I post more of the pictures and show you like how much mud is like, I'm not exaggerating how like there's
and I mean actually if you get down to brass tacks about it, this was before fishing season too, wasn't it? Or
no,
where was it in?
This was fishing season was in.
Okay.
And that's actually why I was staying away from the other side of the road where the mouth of the river comes out. That's where most of the fishermen hang out. It was actually quite a ways away. And I'm not saying, there's not other ways to get into where I was.
Right.
But it's hard enough for me to get in through there. And I'm not fishing. I'm going in to get into the rough stuff.
And it sure seems like the railroad bed would be the most logical way to get in and out of there, too.
Yes.
Which is probably one of the reasons why Erie, believe it or not, has so many sightings. And there's a few videos out there of Bigfoot sighted on railroad grades in Erie. And there's so many railroad grades there. They're like power lines. It's just the perfect way to traverse in a suburban setting.
Oh, yeah. And the best part is railroad tracks they'll cross roads, but they don't go through residential neighborhoods and stuff all the time.
That's a valid point.
They go through secluded areas. They try to make a straight line as much as possible.
Yeah, because trains don't exactly turn on a dime, so they need to have a straight line.
And when you're doing that, you're almost always in a secluded area where you can hide.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I've seen your pictures from down in the bluffs and the swamp there. You're finding a lot of tree structure in there. Is there something that you're finding a lot of? Anything you're not finding much of? Or how would you describe what you're finding? What's some of your favorite things you're finding in this area?
I find a lot of tree bends, which I actually love.
Right.
My theory behind tree bends is a little out there beyond other people. But it's a lot of smaller stuff. A lot of your small X or A glyphs. Mm-hmm. Nothing massive like you find, which is amazing, by the way.
Thank you, man. I really do.
But one of my favorite things that I found was a tunnel of several arches out of apple trees, smaller beech trees, and when I was walking through, I've been in the area so many times, and I was walking through filming, and then when I stopped and turned around, I did not know where I was. And it was just a really weird feeling.
Nice.
And that's why I like to go out and find that stuff. You never know.
Yeah.
What it is, where it might take you.
Yeah.
And to be able to find something that actually takes you somewhere else, a portal for them, or what if it's just a directional thing, a compass?
Yeah.
You know? You just never know what any of these things are. And, I started following these things, and I ended up somewhere where I didn't expect.
Yeah.
It took me off track just because I was following. And you turn around, you look beside you on either side, and there's no tree bends for, hundreds of yards. They're in certain
I know exactly
areas.
what you mean, yeah.
It's almost like they center around energy.
Yeah.
Ley lines.
Yeah.
Whatever they call it.
And I wouldn't feel like you're alone or even in some great minority for feeling that way, because there's a great many of the people that are into this stuff that they would agree with you wholeheartedly. The trees that are in the bend. So you're saying that day you found a lot of apple trees and nut trees that were used to make the bends. Does that seem to be a common thing for you, that it's usually a certain type of tree, or is it all different kinds of trees?
All different kinds of trees, but really in that area, that's just what I noticed. It's a lot more of the apple trees and the beech trees.
Right. Do you find anything that resembles like the ambush shelters or the like the hunting blind looking kind of things?
Oh yes. And when I went back in today, take a couple pictures, I came across, there's a couple areas where there's just vines are growing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I took some close-ups, and it's almost like they're tied together. Like, vines wrap around stuff. I know that. They wrap around, they make their own type of knots. These knots are very intricate knots. And I just thought it was very interesting the way everything was tied together. Because when everything gets green and starts growing in and blooming, you're not going to be able to see that tree.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to see it from the creek. You're not going to be able to see it from where I came in from the road. You're not going to be able to see any of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it reminds me of one of the statements I've read. I think it was from Ontario Sasquatch, and that's apes don't weave, monkeys don't weave. That's a sign of some cognizant intellect, and that's really not indicative of a monkey or an ape.
There was actually one tree I found. It was on the other side by the bluffs, and I had showed Nick a while. I think I showed you too, where there's actually little vines that were coming down, but each vine was holding a different stick.
Yeah.
And all these sticks were just hanging around like ornaments all around this tree.
Oh yeah, you do.
And there was actually in the deer paths, like the animal paths around the tree were actually interesting because they intersect and went off in perfectly straight lines that made a glyph around this tree that had all of these branches hanging down from it.
Yeah, this is absolutely not some dumb animal. This is not,
No.
Yeah.
And why would a person go out there and do something like that?
Oh, what exactly? Why would they? How would they? And when would they?
And a lot of the places I go into, like this winter, a lot of these things that I've found and took pictures of, I can't get to now. The briars have come, like, because I was walking across ice and snow.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all swamp, mud.
Yeah.
I mean, you know the Erie area up there. It's a quagmire pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
And the briars. I mean, who wants to go through briars?
Well, and then the
Other
multiflora
people
rose
like
and
us.
the ticks. The ticks alone. I mean,
Oh, man.
the ticks are so bad that, and they've been bad, but they're worse this year than they've ever been. But they've been bad for years. How many people are really out there beating the bushes besides our crazy backsides?
Exactly.
There's people that do it everywhere, yes, but it's not an abundance of people that are really out there hitting the heavy bush.
I've been using my frog togs and taping them off like at my boots.
Yes.
I don't have to worry about the ticks. When I get back to my car, I take my frog togs off, throw them into a garbage bag, and I can take care of them later.
Yeah.
Lint roller works pretty good too.
Yeah, that's really becoming a bigger and bigger issue all the time, and I think that's something that actually we're going to try to address on some level because it's so intense out there. I don't know if it's that way everywhere, but I think most of the Northeast is the same as it is here, and them little buggers are bad.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, that is going to keep a lot of people out of the woods. And I mean, you really can't blame people if they do stay out of the woods for that reason, because Lyme disease it's a real deal, man. I know several people that are affected by it. It's a real thing. So, but on a positive note, I'm very glad, and it's a good thing that you were there that day with your phone and you got that video and stuff. Really enjoyed it. I really like that. And that's awesome that you've been able to spend all this time in the bluffs, because this is really an area I never really paid a lot of attention to. So it's good that we got boots on the ground up there. So we're glad to have you up there. And we want to thank you for coming in tonight, Brother Thomas. And it's always our pleasure to talk to you. You're always bringing something cool to the table, and tonight's certainly no exception.
Well, thank you for having me, and you have a good night.
Pleasure was all ours. Be well, my friend.